Hello traders and welcome to a diary of a trader. We're going to be going over a series of videos over components of financial astrology and how they apply to the market. And again, financial astrology is mathematical psychology based on astronomy. So all we're doing is we are finding the angle, the longitudinal angles of planets or the sun or other things in the sky, relating them to what is happening in the market or here on Earth. And that is all that is. It's just adjusting the time forward or back and looking at what has happened in previous market cycles when there has been certain astronomical phenomena. And one of the most important parts of financial astrology is retrograde cycles. And what retrograde essentially means is that if we're looking at a planet from the Earth, and we know that things rotate around the sun, they also move around the Earth, or the Earth moves around it because things travel at different speeds. Sometimes it looks like a planet is either moving backwards or that it's standing still. And that just has to do with the position of where the Earth is at that particular time. And so many planets, they go retrograde during certain times of the year, multiple times during the year, or sometimes it's many, many years before they go retrograde. But there are key things that happen in some markets when instruments or when a planet goes retrograde. And so we're looking at the British pound right now. And what I want to do is I want to get the retrograde tool out. And I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to expand the view so it's over all the views, okay? And so this is Mercury. It always defaults to Mercury, but one of the ones we always like to look at is Venus. When Venus goes retrograde, we want to analyze what happens before, during, and after we get into a Venus retrograde cycle. So if we're looking at the pound, and if this is as far back as we can go here, this is back in 2009, we can see that there was a sharp drop prior to the Venus going retrograde, and we saw that during that phase it traded up and then it promptly traded down. And so we're looking at something that is telling us what is the behavior that happens. Is there something consistent that happens before, during, or after the retrograde cycle? And so far, the shared thing that we see, we've had two incidences back to back of prices falling as we exit a retrograde cycle. All right, we did go up a little bit here, but we did have a sharp drop shortly after that. A drop. And so for the pound, it looks like it's very common to see a drop as we leave the Venus retrograde cycle. Another cycle that is very important to look at is Mars. Mars is often called the trigger planet. And if we go back and look at Mars retrograde cycle, this says that we move down a lot and then up. Up. We moved up. It's hard one to read. If we could say that stays flat to neutral. And here we have the other Mars retrograde, which if we look at, okay, well, what is the behavior of Mars here? So Mars says that we exited Mars and we're trading up right now. Is that pretty standard for what happens in the past? Yes, Mars does seem to trigger some rises in the pound after the price leaves the retrograde cycle. There's also Jupiter. Jupiter retrograde can sometimes mean nothing. It really depends on the markets that you trade. You have to look at them. We could look at some other markets, like we could look at Bitcoin, for example. Cryptocurrencies are also sensitive to retrograde cycles. So here is this orange block here. That is the Mars retrograde. Again, I'm going to put the orb of overall views. So let's go back in time and see what has happened. So Mars retrograde. What has happened as prices leave? They have left, stayed flat, and then traded up. This was the Mt. Gox time period. So we exited, we traded up, and then ultimately trended down. Here we have trending extreme. There's a big rise in prices that happen in the Mars retrograde with cryptocurrencies. The very common thing that we see is prices moving higher as it goes out of the retrograde cycle. And then one other cycle is the Uranus cycle. If we look at this in Bitcoin, there's not a lot of correlation here to any significant patterns. But one of the things we want to notice with any kind of cycle is that we want to pay attention to a lot of things, because retrograde cycles themselves are not enough to really give any type of signal or trade idea. We want to see on that day, that the day of the retrograde cycle starting and ending, we want to see, is there a type of lunar phenomena that also happens? Is there a new moon phase around that zone? Is there an apogee perigee? So if we go back to the pound, and let's go ahead with Mars again, and let's put down the moon phases, and we just want the full moons and new moons. Oops. And we'll do the apogee perigee. And so what we want to see is, are there phases around the end and beginning of these? Yes. So we have a full moon followed by a moon's perigee here. Apogee perigee mean that it's the distance of the moon being the farthest from the Earth or the closest to the Earth. Not really close enough there. Moon phases, really, if you've watched the series of videos we've done over moon phases, those are kind of one of the primary triggers. Now, right here, currently on the pound, it is trading at 129.56, and we have a full moon that happened on the 27th, and we had the moon was apogee just a couple days before that, right as we're exiting a Mars retrograde cycle while we're at these yearly lows. So this is a good sign that a trend can change based on these conditions right here. Of course, there's other things that we want to look at in order to have a bias for going long, but retrograde cycles in conjunction with other financial astrological time cycles, they provide really powerful signals in a combination with pattern, price, and time. Thank you for watching this video, and I look forward to talking with you in our future videos.